What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to some Bible reading. So, this time, we're getting into Genesis 35, and just, to catch up on relevant information, Jacob, moved away from Laban back to, at least near his homeland, settled in a place called Shechem, or at least in a place where someone named Shechem resided. I did look on a map of ancient Israel, and it had a place called Shechem there. So, maybe the place was named after the prince, or vice versa, I don't know, but anyway, dude named Shechem just, defiled Jacob's daughter Dinah, and so her brothers were not happy about it, and basically wound up, devising a plot to kill all the men and then plunder the town. And Jacob, after they've done this, is like, "What have you done? You're going to completely ruin me. All the nearby peoples are going to hear about this, and they're going to come and kill all of us before we would even possibly have a chance to do anything like this ever again. And there's so many, they're going to outnumber us. There's no way we'll stand a chance." So, with that being the situation, we get to chapter 35. Starting with verse 1. Here we go. Then God said to Jacob, "Get ready and move to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So Jacob told everyone in his household, "Get rid of all your pagan idols, purify yourselves, and put on clean clothing. We are now going to Bethel, where I will build an altar to the God who answered my prayers when I was in distress. He has been with me wherever I have gone." Okay, so in light of those events I just talked about earlier, God's like, okay, I mean, it seems very closely connected, and, God not wanting Jacob to die is like, okay, you're not going to last long here anymore. Move to this other place. And, friendly reminder, I'm the one helping you here, so, I mean, there was also, I think he built an altar there before as well. Didn't it say? I don't know, but he's going to build an altar now since, he's clearly heard from God, go to this place so that you'll be safe, essentially. But anyway, let's just move on to verse 4 here. So they gave Jacob all their pagan idols and earrings, and he buried them under the great tree near Shechem. As they set out, a terror from God spread over the people in all the towns of that area, so no one attacked Jacob's family. Eventually, Jacob and his household arrived at Luz, also called Bethel, in Canaan. Jacob built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, which means God of Bethel, because God had appeared to him there when he was fleeing from his brother Esau. What was the meaning of Bethel before, though? There was a particular significance to that I really would... I mean, because again, the whole El part is already related to God, so it sounds almost like it's going to be another one of those sort of repetitive type of names for a place. But let me do a quick search here and see. Yeah. So Bethel means, I mean, if the search is right, it means house of God. So now you're saying, now you're calling it El Bethel. So you're saying the God of the house of God, which is a bit redundant, but like, I don't know. I guess, given Jacob's multiple positive experiences at the place, that's about the only way that really makes a whole lot of sense to me. Anywho, okay, verse 8. Soon after this, Rebekah's old nurse Deborah died. She was buried beneath the oak tree in the valley below Bethel. Ever since, the tree has been called Alon Bakuth, which means oak of weeping. Now that Jacob had returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again at Bethel. God blessed him, saying, "Your name is Jacob, but you will not be called Jacob any longer. From now on, your name will be Israel." So God renamed him Israel. Okay, so I know there was the previous instance, while Jacob, was waiting to see what would happen with Esau after returning home, and, he wrestled with God, and, he essentially was first named Israel there, but now God is basically saying that that's like his primary name now, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm trying to see. Yeah, we already established the meanings of these names. There's another note later on that talks about the connection or usage of Jacob's two names, but I guess we'll get to that when we get to that verse. Anyway, verse 11. Then God said, "I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. You will become a great nation, even many nations. Kings will be among your descendants. And I will give you the land I once gave to Abraham and Isaac. Yes, I will give it to you and your descendants after you." Then God went up from the place where he had spoken to Jacob. Jacob set up a stone pillar to mark the place where God had spoken to him. Then he poured wine over it as an offering to God, and anointed the pillar with olive oil. And Jacob named the place Bethel, which means house of God, because God had spoken to him there. Okay, so, this is still the same place, right? So, is he calling it Bethel or El Bethel? I mean, it's a little confusing, but anyway, so God basically is saying to Jacob that, okay, I'm going to give you the land of your forefathers for you and your descendants, basically going back to, the covenant that he had previously made with Abraham and Isaac, which really is supposed to be fulfilled somewhere along the line of descendants. We still have yet to really totally see that come to fruition. So anyway, and then of course, because of God pronouncing this, I don't know, blessing or at least statement, promise with Jacob, then Jacob is, wanting to give glory back to God by setting up the altar and all that kind of stuff. All right. looks like we're going to shift gears a little bit here at verse 16. Leaving Bethel, Jacob and his clan moved on toward Ephrath. But Rachel went into labor while they were still some distance away. Her labor pains were intense. After a very hard delivery, the midwife finally exclaimed, "Don't be afraid. You have another son." Rachel was about to die, but with her last breath, she named the baby Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. Or is it Ben-Oni? I don't know. Whatever. The baby's father, however, called him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a stone monument over Rachel's grave, and it can be seen there to this day. Again, to this day, probably meaning at the time of this being written, not necessarily present day. But, yeah. Note, Bethlehem. Bethlehem is going to be an important place. Even if not until way later. But, anyway, so, Rachel's pregnant. She has a very difficult birth, but the son does survive. And Jacob, you would assume it's Jacob, calls him Benjamin. And that, for the most part, is the name that son will be known by from here on out. And then because of the difficult childbirth, Rachel dies. So she never actually made it to Ephrath or Bethlehem. Verse 21. Then Jacob traveled on and camped beyond Migdal Eder. While he was living there, Reuben had intercourse with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Jacob soon heard about it. Okay, we're about to get into some genealogy stuff, so before then, let's take a note at the note at the bottom of the page. So basically, it mentions Jacob and Israel often being kind of interchanged throughout the Old Testament. And because of this, like, you know, even throughout various times well past the lifespan of Jacob himself, you'll hear his name used, whether to refer to him or even the land that gets named after him, essentially. Although the land is more frequently called Israel, the land and the people group that lived there that were his descendants. But occasionally you might still hear that place called Jacob, or like the land of Jacob. And I guess it mentions this more so because, like, well, with all the genealogy stuff it's about to get into, Jacob essentially becomes the namesake of the land that his descendants inhabit, because those, you know, basically the, like, he and his sons were kind of the starting point of a much larger settlement of that promised land. So, anyway, Alright, here we go. kind of picking up at the end of verse 22. These are the names of the 12 sons of Jacob. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's oldest son, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant, were Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, were Gad and Asher. These are the names of the sons who were born to Jacob at Paddan Aram. So that's 12 sons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from Leah. And then 2 each from Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. Those names are going to be significant before long. Basically we'll have to deal with the whole land of Israel and populating it and that kind of thing. But I'll get into more detail when we actually get to that. Okay, verse 27. So Jacob returned to his father Isaac in Mamre, which is near Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had both lived as foreigners. Isaac lived for 180 years, then he breathed his last and died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Oh, wait. That's really confusing wording there. So, or maybe it's just confusing because it's talking about Jacob saying that he, moved back, returned to his father Isaac, and like Jacob is the subject of things, but then suddenly it's like Isaac lived for 180 years, then he breathed his last. So you almost want to think it's still talking about Jacob, but no, it's switched over to Isaac. So Jacob officially moves back home, and then Isaac actually finally dies, and Jacob and Esau bury him. So, anyway, that does it for that chapter. So, I wonder if it seems like there's more genealogy stuff coming up here. Whether that's going to transition us away from Jacob as well or not, we'll see. But anyway, so yeah, long story short with that chapter, Jacob officially and completely moves back home. Now, Rachel and, one of her maidservants dies along the way. But otherwise he makes it back in time to still be there for his father's passing. So, anyway, that's all I've got for you this time. So, as usual, like, share, subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. Just look down in the description for info on following my channel and my other social media pages and all that good stuff. And of course, leave comments down below with any thoughts that you have, whether it's related to, this chapter, other Bible stuff, other video ideas, whatever you have for me. Let me know down below. So that's going to do it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I will see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.